Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the shiur. Chassidus in the morning, 15 minutes. Kuntres Heichaltzu. So a quick story before we start. There was once a chassid in time of the Alter Rebbe. He wasn't always a chassid. He was actually from Eretz Yisroel. And in Eretz Yisrael in those days, people that lived there, they basically just learned all day. That was like the goal of going to Eretz Yisrael was to be able to daven and learn. And that's what they did. And they were very poor. There's a lot of stories about this. They were very poor. But they came because they wanted to be close to Hashem and really connect with the holiness of Eretz Yisrael. So this guy's really daven and learned all day. And he wasn't a chassid in Chassidus. And then at a certain point he decides he got wind of Chassidus, whatever it was, and he went to I don't know what the Alter Rebbe was at the time, but he went to the Alter Rebbe. And so he stayed by the Alter Rebbe, and he learned Chassidus, and he davened, and he learned. So the Chassidim asked him, they said, I don't understand. Like your whole life was davening and learning. So before you're davening and learning in Yerushalayim, now you're davening and learning, or I think he was in Hebron. Now you're davening and learning in Lubavitch. What's the difference? So he said, I'll tell you the difference. He goes, before, when I davened and learned, I used to think to myself, how is it possible that there's going to be a Gan Eden big enough for me because of all my davening and learning? He said, but after I came to Chassidus, and what did he answer himself? He said, it must be the Eibush this Kol Yachol. Hashem can do everything, so it must be that he can also have a place for me big enough. He goes, then I learned Chassidus, and then I said, how is it possible that the Eibush can stand such a low human being with all my faults and all my issues? And I said to myself, you know what? It must be the Eibush is Kol Yachol. The Eibush can do everything, so you can also love me and care for me with all my faults. And it's I'm not saying the story to the T. But that's the idea. I don't remember all the exact details. That's the idea. The point is that what he's saying is, and this is sort of what Chassidus teaches us, what we're learning today, and we've been learning yesterday as well, is that and he still davened and he still learned. It didn't change him in a negative way, but it made him better. It made him realize, and this is sort of what we're talking about, the realization that we're fortunate enough to be able to serve the King of all kings. And that's a humbling feeling. And recognizing that as low as we are and as incomparable to God as we are, like we talked about in the past, Yesh Ma'ayin, and how we're like so much of so we can't compare between us and God, but together with that, we still are able to, and we still can connect to God. It's a humbling experience. This is what we're talking about. So we'll start off from the bottom of page 100. Continue on what we're talking about. We're talking about being humbling. So we said that a person should like the ultimate purpose that he Torah mitzvah is that he should have no pride, and he should have all bittul, and he should have, and we talked about, he should be what's the meriros, be better from the distance from God. And he says like this, and then he continues going. And Bafrat, and specifically, when you contemplate, and you think about, and you meditate on the greatness of God, and understanding what that means, according to the greatness and the awesomeness and the exaltedness of God, even your true avodah, meaning even if you do everything exactly the way you meant to do it, in truth, meaning essentially, in comparison to God, he kolei mamish. It's as if it's nothing. Not that what you're doing is nothing, but in comparison, it's like a kid that learns how to walk. That is the greatest thing, and that's an amazing accomplishment. And think about it. A baby goes from not being able to walk to being able to walk. It's huge, and their life changing totally, and that's true. But in comparison to an Olympic athlete, a runner, that baby's walk, it's true for the baby, that is amazing, but in comparison to the runner, it's nothing. That's what we're saying. In comparison to God, all the stuff that we do is in essence like nothing, no significance. It can be even considered like a sin. Not that what you're doing is a sin, because you're not, because you're doing a mitzvah, but he's just showing you how irrelevant in a certain sense and how distant it is from God's reality. For example, Melech God of an awesome, wondrous king. When you serve the king not according to his stature, if you don't serve the king according to the way the king is, that it's an embarrassment. Imagine coming to this great king, great awesome king, the wealthiest person, the most powerful person, and you come and you bring him some mud that you made. A little kid, he made mud and bring the mud. So what are you doing? Even though for the kid that could be a gift, and it could be nice, and it could be meaning, and he means it in all his heart. But in relation to the king, that's nothing. It's mud. It's when you're serving, when you're working for the boss. And if God's the boss or the king's the boss, your mud is nice for you, but not for him. Your Torah mitzvahs are nice for you, but in comparison to God, not really. You can't compare the Avodah and the simplicity of what you're doing in comparison to the king. A simple kid versus the king, you can't compare the way they do things. Therefore, when you're doing something for the king, like you do it for a simple person, it's like a sin. You're rebelling against the king, which is in essence, when you say murder b'malchus, it means you're rebelling against the king. It means it's a death penalty. An example, the same example we talked about. If you come to the king with some mud, you say, "Here, king, he's a gift, mud." That's like the king. That it's so disrespectful. Even though for you it could mean a lot, but from the reality of the king, it's nothing. You're demeaning the honor of the king. You're giving him mud. What are you giving him mud? Now, for you don't realize even. It could be you don't even realize you're doing the nicest thing, but for the king, it's totally wrong. So this will help us understand what does it mean by above, by God. Because in comparison to the wondrousness and the awesomeness of the infinity of God, we have no boundlessness, it's unfathomable. We can't understand this at all. Even the greatest tzaddikim avodah, in truth, it's incomparable to God's greatness. Even the greatest tzaddik, even the Rebbe and the Moshe Rabbeinu and David HaMelech doing all the avodah and being pure, and Avram Avinu and everything he did, and as a chariot to God, in essence, to the level of godliness, the true essence of God, it's nothing. Not that what we're doing is nothing, because remember, in our reality, it's real. When a kid walks and a baby learns how to walk, it's real and it's huge and it's amazing. But we're saying in comparison to the reality of the true reality of the existence of the whole world, how it is. How is it? It's not even comparable to God's greatness. That's how we say in 10 days of tshuva that we transgressed and we sinned and we did all these wrong things. Why is it tzaddik saying that? Tzaddik didn't do anything wrong. So even Moshe Rabbeinu need to say vidui and 10 days of tshuva. Why? Moshe didn't do anything wrong. So what's the reason? I know the reason is because according to the true level of God, the ultimate level of God, not talking about God as he comes down to this world, but God in the true essence of him, even the truest avodah in comparison to that essence of God is nothing. And that's why I have to say that ask for forgiveness. This is what it means that the rabbi said on the pasuk. Oh, 1 second. He says in his footnotes, he goes, it's considered like a chait. So chait also comes from the word chisaron, lacking, missing. But he's saying in truth, all the avodah, it's good, as good as it is, it's missing. Meaning the kid bringing the mud to the king, it means well, and he has it all sincerity, and the king will accept it because of the sincerity. But in truth, it's totally lacking. It's mud. He has nothing to do with it. Yeah. So this is what it means. It says they bowed down. Moshe bowed down to the ground. What does it mean? Why did he bow down? Made us emes ra. He saw the attribute of truth. He saw truth, meaning, and this is truth, like the truest level of truth. Who can stand before God's truth? And he saw God's truth, so he bowed down. It was too much for him. As much as Moshe was emes, Moshe emes, Taras emes, Moshe was 100% true. But as true as Moshe can be in comparison to the essence of truth, it's incomparable. And so Moshe bowed down. It was like bowing down also means bitzl, mavatzil yourself. You're putting yourself, you're humbling yourself because it's so awesome. Moshe calls elsewhere at length. So look over there, more talks about this. But nevertheless, so even though this is the truth, this is something we have to understand, that in truth, this is what this Chassid was saying. He's saying, before I learned Chassidus, I thought I was the greatest person in the world, and I thought I'm getting the best schar, like God is so proud of me. He's like, me and him are getting buddy. When I learned Chassidus, I realized, me and God, how can I even say the same level? It's like we can't even, to compare a child that gives mad to the king is incomparably closer than us and God. And then he said, and together with that, as much as I'm so distant from God and God and I, it's like two opposites to the furthest extreme that we can't even understand. He still wants for me and he desires for me and he cares for me and he's sad for me. Such a humbling experience. It's such a powerful feeling. So what he's saying is, he goes, but bad. However, he Amr Razal, but Medrash Rabbah al-Pasuk says in Medrash Rabbah al-Pasuk, Shor keves, an ox or a sheep. And what does it say over there about this? It says, Kishahu mavakesh, when Hashem requests, even though in truth, where God's holding, where we're holding is so far distant. But when God asks from us to do something, but in truth, Hashem asks for us. He has no problem with the mud, even though in truth the mud is nothing for him. But he knows it's what we can do. He knows that's what we're holding. But according to the truth level, we can't do such a level. We can't really, at the highest level of the king, just like the baby can't. As much as he learned to walk, he can't really do anything for the king. But what God is very kind and he sees what level we're holding. He says, you do as much as you can. And that's great. And I love it. And it's beautiful. It's like a baby comes and little kids, they come and they draw you a picture and they say, oh, look at this. I made a picture for you. And it's all scribbles. You're like, well, what is this? And they'll go, this is you, and this is mommy, and this is this. And you look at it, it's like, all right, whatever you say, but you appreciate it, you love it. I have one of the pictures my kid made in my, my drawer, and I save it because I see the emiskite, the truth of what he did. That's what he's saying. That God asked according to what I love, and what I love is that's what we do. And we do, and we give it, and then it's beautiful. Nevertheless, even though you have to appreciate that what God gives you is according to what you're able to do, and when you do that to the truest extent that you can, that's beautiful. Because she's but when you think about the reality situation and how distant you are from God in truth, and how much even the best thing you do in truth for God, it's not really that much. So you'll be embittered, you'll be sad. Like, wow, it's so sad that I want to be connected to God. I love God and I care about God and he cares about me and he makes this whole world for me and he wants me to do all these things. And I want to give back to him, but I can't. So that will make you bitter. Not as depressed, it's never good enough. It's not good, but it'll make you feel like let me try more. And even more when you're going to think about and even more when you say to yourself, 1 second. We're talking about here that a person is doing everything he's meant to do as best as he can. Even that is not enough. It's not enough, but even that, in comparison to the essence of God, is not that much. But what happens if I'm not even doing what I'm supposed to be doing? I'm doing wrong things. So can Niskalel explain before at the beginning of this chapter? Even more so when you put foreign thoughts in your avodah, you're not even doing avodah properly. Even what you're giving is not given properly. He has in the bottom here a little heavy statement. He goes, "Harei hu chayte upesheh mamish." You're a sinner and you're a little transgressor. Meaning, if you're doing like doing the wrong things, you should do the wrong. And he says in the note of it, he says Rashab wrote concerning this line. There's no need to put this in. He like basically done like that's what he thought, but it's not. It's a little hard to hear. But he's saying when you're doing something wrong, we're not talking about even something right. If you do something wrong, how much more so you'll feel embittered. It's like, what am I doing? The King of all kings. That's I can't even compare. I can't even understand it. Anything that I do is not even in essence nothing. But he still cares for me. Still wants me to do something, and he's happy when I put in the effort to do what I could do for my best. And I'm not even doing my best. It's someone that cares about you. Have you ever felt that feeling? Someone that cares about you. Let me finish and I'll talk about it. It's getting late. When you pay attention to your things, that not everything is for Hashem. And that's causing you to distance yourself from godliness. So so all this makes you embittered, it makes you sad, makes you bitter, and you look what I'm holding. You cry out from the bitterness of your soul. And that I'm so distant from God. You recognize how distant I am from God. Like the story in that Chassid, that he was so distant that he recognized how distant he was, and it bothered him. He still davened, he still won. Nothing changed in the actual act, but his whole intention was different. Now I'm connected to God, and I feel so distant, and I don't want to be distant. And you push yourself, and that's a beautiful feeling. That's a feeling of being unsatisfied. But Kitzur, Avodah is a shiflus. The Avodah, the work in humbling yourself, from realizing and from meditating on the distance that you have from God. In the way you do your Avodah. Specifically, when you compare to who you're serving and how it should be for you serving, when you recognize that, you'll be embittered, which will push you, motivate you to move on forward. To be continued.